Hey everyone. Before we get started here, I just wanted to apologize for this episode being slightly late. I got a new office, and so I've been spending a lot of time moving books into there, which is taking up more time than I thought. Also, Kevin and I sat down and talked about Chapter 1 of Trails from Zero, and it took a long time. It took almost 2 hours. So instead of giving you guys a 2 hour podcast, we decided to split it into two. So this episode will mostly be about initial impressions and the side quests, and then we'll dive deeper into the main narrative of the chapter in the next episode. And welcome to episode 56 of Trails in the Pod. I'm Colin, and that's Kevin.
Colin, how are Joshua and Estelle like fish?
How are they like fish?
Yes, how are they like fish?
I don't know, man. You're stumping me.
They start to smell when they overstay their welcome. That's right, we have intrusions of the previous game's protagonist into Chapter 1 of Trails from Zero, featuring Lloyd the SSS, and lots of Crossbell we haven't seen in the prologue, because we are going everywhere, doing everything today. Well, we're talking about it. We did it a couple days ago.
I mean, I think I beat the chapter like a week ago, so I need to recall all the things that have happened. But sometimes, Kevin, I swear that you just don't like fun, because you're like, oh, I see. There's Joshua and Estelle. This is shit. This is terrible. How dare they be in Crossbell, even when we already know that they're going to be there because we read Ring of Judgment.
I don't think that they should be there. It is time to pass the torch on. Let them have their own personal, unknown adventures. The spotlight is on Lloyd, Randy, and the other two.
Ellie and Tio. Come on,
Yes.
Estelle and Joshua didn't overshadow them that much that you forgot their names. You beat this thing yesterday.
We did not overshadow them because I forgot their names. I forgot their names. Actually, I didn't forget their names. It was a test to see if you remembered who they were. And you passed. Good job.
You know what, Kevin? I'm going to tell you something. There's going to be a moment in this game that you are going to hate. Like, I know exactly what moment it is, and you are going to be so mad about it, and then in about 4 months after, you're going to be like, I'm not mad about it anymore.
The centrifugal force of my snark and annoyance, I'm sure, can power most of the eastern seaboard. Because, Colin, we don't have Septium. We don't have the orbital revolution. Crossbow does. They have huge amounts of natural resources in addition to being a big technological and economic center. So why don't you take us into Chapter 1 of Trails from Zero?
Sure. So, the prologue is pretty chunky, but chapter 1 is even more chunky. The premise of the plot is that the Crossbow Guardian Force is calling upon the SSS for help in order to control a monster outbreak. There are rumors of attacks of different beasts that nobody's really quite sure what they are. The CGF can't figure it out. And because the top brass is starting to lose interest in this investigation, they're turning it over to the SSS in order to see if, with our detective skills, we can figure out what it is.
So Crossbell understandably does not want to involve the Bracer Guild. The government is seen as weak enough as it is. They would prefer to keep this in-house. Letting the relatively new, untested, and kind of negatively polarized Special Support Squadron take the lead can be taken, I think, and then tell me if you agree or not, as two ways. One, this is an honest, let's see what and if they can do it. Two, it's We couldn't do it. We're not entirely sure if they can. So they'll probably fail and maybe we'll look better. And a lot of that depends on how much is the rather efficient, good natured lieutenant colonel calling the shots versus the unseen colonel, head of the CGF, who is much more concerned with politics and optics than results.
So I do get the sense that this is Sonya's baby. Sonya Bale's the lieutenant colonel that is handing it over to the SSS, and we'll see more why. But there's a connection between her and Sergei, so that can kind of explain why she decided to give the SSS a chance.
Indeed, indeed, indeed. So, this chapter, like the prologue, it takes place over 2 days. We have three spots to go to. Two that we do on day one, Amorca, and then St. Ursula's Hospital, and we have a couple, maybe only one or two, maybe only one side quest in Crossbell itself, and then we have a couple more side quests in Crossbell in day two once we come back from the activities in day one before we go out to the third and final place of the chapter
Well,
mains.
it's definitely wrong to say that there's like one side quest in Crossbell, especially looking at all of the quests that we've written down that we want to talk about. This wasn't even all of the quests that were available, but some of them are secret, so that might be one of the reasons why you thought that there was only one or two, because there are missable quests here, including one that you should really like because it has to do with a kitty.
And I'm so sad I missed out on it. And we'll talk more about secret, unannounced, unreported quests when we get to them and what's good boundaries and how discoverable should they be in practice and in theory.
So, Kevin, do you want to talk main plot first? Do we want to like go through Amorica, go through Ursula, go through mains, and then talk about side quests? Or do you want to talk about side quests and then we'll hit the main plot?
I think these side quests are fairly separate from the main plot, that we can talk about them first. And I think that we should, because there's a lot going on in the main plot, and it would feel a bit anticlimactic, or so I think, if we were to go into this expansive new world of Crossbell, the new people, players, the events, characters, new and old, and then end the episode on, okay, so we returned some overdue books to the library. Let's talk about that.
Well, fair enough. So let's talk about the overdue book retrieval because I want to get your take on it if it's a good quest or not. And I thought that there was a particularly funny moment in it that we need to acknowledge. So what there you are assigned having to go around collecting 3 books from Crossbell, right? This is a fetch quest. In your opinion, is it successful in becoming more than a fetch quest, or is it just something that you do in order to get your detective points?
I think it is more successful because of the writing. We get some interesting insights into, what kind of books people want to read. We have history, we have fiction of varying types. We go to different places in Crossbell, and it sheds light on one of the great institutions of the modern city, the library. It feels just natural for Crossbow to have a library in a way that, maybe this is my anti-liberal bias talking, that I would not expect to see one in Bose, in Rouen, even in Grand Sol. It feels of a different time. Crossbow feels much more modern. Of course, they would have a library and delinquents who, aren't putting in their books on time.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. It's weird. I never thought about it, but why don't we expect to see libraries in Liberal? We do see private collections of books, which is how
Yes.
books used to be stored way back in the day, before the invention or reinvention, depending on how you read some ancient stuff. But before the invention of public libraries, like these were all private collections. And we've seen private collections in Liberal in the different embassies, for instance. But you're right. It feels way more natural in Crossbell. Maybe it's because it's introduced to us so early on. And in the guy who runs it is Lloyd's, well, not his biological uncle. He's Cecile's father, but like immediately we have this connection with this place that, I mean, I don't know. I never really wondered why Liberl didn't have one, but now that we've seen it in Crossbell, I feel like at least Grand Cell should have something.
It feels of a different time, Crossbell on the one hand and Liberal on the other. We'll get to this in more depth when talking about St. Ursula's, but would you expect to ever hear the term neurology in FC or SC? I wouldn't.
No, I mean, we had no real concept of there being state of the art surgery at all. I mean, for the longest, Liberl felt like a medieval kingdom, early modern, until you got to Zeiss, right? And then you had fucking escalators, and then it felt like, oh, maybe we are entering the future. Whereas Crossbell, it feels like walking down downtown Ithaca, except that you also have more automatons sometimes.
And you and I both commented how different Zeiss felt after several chapters of a 18th, maybe even early 19th century inspired setting.
Yeah, but
So back to Crossbow, though.
let me tell you why I really like this overdue book retrieval quest. Because I don't know if you did this, but you can read the books that they give you.
I did indeed.
One of the books is famous women in the history of Zemuria. Not Crossbell, not Liberl, not Erebonia, but the whole continent. Kevin, can you guess how many important women there are in the history of Zemuria?
I'm gonna guess there's one for each of the major factions. Actually, there's fewer. There's three, and then four major factions. Liberal, who's represented by Queen Alicia. So how historical is that? Feels a bit contemporary. There's Erebonia, there's Crossbell, there's Calvert. So that's four, of which there's only three in the entirety history of the four powers across most of the continent, and one of which is kind of a cop out because it's a reigning queen.
Plus, it's not like this is modern history. This is the whole history. It's going back to, like, the establishment of Erebonia as an empire, or the establishment of Calvard as a democracy. I think it's interesting that, we're seeing some of these more historical figures written down. And one of them, the one from Erebonia, having played a lot of these games, I didn't recognize when I first read this book how important that entry was. But it's one of those things that made me say, huh, they planned out a lot of these games beforehand. That was something that really struck me. And I kept being reminded of that throughout playing the whole of Chapter 1.
Yeah, I could not tell you going to my head who the woman in Erebonia who they named. So
I should remember because I'm so bearish about it, and the name is Elan Sandlot. That's her name. Elan
yes, I
Sandlot.
remember thinking of the movie.
Yeah. um, but so that's for the library. There's some other books too that I don't really remember, but I really wanted to highlight the Sandlot connection, and also the laughable nature of the fact that there are only three important women. Of course, there's more than that. It's funny. You want to talk about this monster infestation? Bleh. You want to talk about this monster infestation in the apartment downtown?
Yeah. So we get a request to go to the back alley where the proprietress of a shop also moonlights as a slum lord. She was an incredibly wealthy woman. One of her vacant complexes has been taken over by monsters, and the SSS is tasked to go clear them out. So, on first, it's a fairly standard, go to all the rooms, kill all the monsters. And then when we're done, we learn that they had been breeding in there. And then the leader of one of the gangs from the urban areas of the city from the downtown comes, and then we have to, with only Vandy and Lloyd, go rescue him in the final boss fight. So, at least for me, I thought it was quite a difficult final fight because we did not have a full party, only Vandy and Lloyd. The other NBC combatant,
His
who
name is
is
Wald.
Wald, started off separated from us by the enemies, about half or so health, and neither Vandy nor Lloyd are natural healers. You may not have a good number of slots on Law, but even if you have HP1, cast Tier, Tira, what say you, they don't have that much EP. They don't cast all that quickly, so it's a balancing act to survive on half a party without Tio, without Ellie, who are much more natural mage and support.
Yeah, for sure. I remember doing that fight. That item management was really helpful for that.
Yes.
Um, Especially since all three of them are melee fighters, so
Yeah.
once you get into the part where you need to heal them, you can probably heal them pretty quickly. Though not all the time if you get like a knockback or something like that. And I believe this is true that if Wald dies, you lose the fight.
Indeed.
What I found really interesting about this mission was not necessarily the whole police get split up thing, but it was that, you know, number one, there is a monster breeding ground in these apartments,
In the
which means that
city.
nobody went to check on it for a long time. And then the proprietress decides that she doesn't want to deal with it, and instead of hiring an exterminator or something like that, she hires the police. But then Wald lives next door, right? This is where the Vipers are. And
Yes.
notices that the police are walking around his territory, and then he comes in to then deal with the problem. Um, and I found that interaction to be quite interesting because there is a certain amount of respect that Wald has for the SSS, depending on strength levels and stuff like that. And this is another occasion in which Lloyd and Randy demonstrate their power to Wald. There was also a fight back in the prologue that you could win, and then he would respect you more for that. So I think it's important for our interaction with Wald, and it's also a really interesting way of looking at how the police just don't show up to the downtown. To the point that when they do show up, it's seen as an intrusion. It's not seen as something, oh, thank God, the police are finally here. Which seems pretty verisimilitudinous to other downtown areas in major cities.
It's not even we have to go hide or be on our best behavior. It's the daily, every 2 days, even weekly patrol or sweep or what have you. This is an assault on our territory, on areas that we control. We have to respond accordingly. I'm sure Walt thinks it slightly, they don't get in over their heads and have to be rescued and so forth.
But it also demonstrates that um, while Wald might claim to operate in this territory, he's not that good at it
No.
because he let this infestation happen, right? He did not seem to care about it until we were already there. And then we had to go rescue him.
And this vendor is a valuable piece of real estate, not only unusable but dangerous for the district as a whole. You would think that one, it would be a priority before now to get this dealt with either by the owner or by the gangs in downtown themselves. They don't want monsters to make life even more difficult for themselves and the people that they claim to protect slash oppress.
The people they claim to protect slash oppress.
Or
What does
not
that
claim
mean,
for the
Kevin?
latter, not claim for the latter, as in we don't know how much of the consent of the government is going on for the normal residents, the civilians of
Oh,
downtown.
there's absolutely no consent. The civilians do not like the gangs,
Yes, as
and
in
they're like
it's
there's
not.
a optional scene thing that I'll talk about that pretty much encapsulates that.
Yeah, it's not claim to protect, claim to oppress. It's claim to protect
But
slash oppress.
they don't claim to protect. We keep coming back to this. You said it last time we talked in the prologue. They don't claim to protect the downtown area. Wald is mad about intrusions on his territory, but that is different.
I'm gonna find the line, and then we'll circle back to this. We can touch base. Let's get some real synergy going on. And until we do, why don't we go to the next bullet point on the agenda and talk about bureaucracy?
Yeah, we talked about this ticket inspection quest a little bit last week when we were talking about how Erebonia was, you know, upholding its own laws on Crossbellian soil. Now that you have actually played through that quest, do you come to the same conclusions as I do? Because I don't think I was the most precise as to what exactly the relationship was when talking about that quest.
Was he? I got the impression that this guy was an employee of the Crossbell State who was making sure that trains entering Erebonia weren't in a violation of Erebonian law, but in the same way that you travel from the overseas to the US, before you get to the US customs, you often have to go through the deporting country border force or whatever.
I don't think that he's an employee of Crossbell State. I think it's pretty clear that he is an employee of Erebonia.
So we do get confirmation, Colin. Attendant Lux at the train station tells us, by the way, Quattro was dispatched here by the Empire for inspection purposes. He's not actually employed by the corporation, i.e., by the private railway corporation in and serving Crossbell. So Quattro, like you said, is a foreign, not just national, but I think it's fair to call him a foreign governmental official, ensuring that a foreign set of laws are followed in another state's quasi sovereign territory.
Cool. I'm glad you agree. I mean, I think that we would have to see also how Calvert is doing it, if they're doing it in the same way and stuff like that. But I do think that this is. I mean, I don't want to say it strengthens the parallel because I already made the parallel, but it is a reminder to us that in some ways Crossbow is an awful lot like concession era China or Iran having been divided by uh, the British and the Russians. Because it is not the case that Crossbell has its own sovereignty. It has autonomy, but that autonomy is consistently not questioned, trampled on. Right? The whole presence of Imperial troops at the train station is a reminder.
And we can see another violation of this quasi sovereignty, quasi dependency in the side quest itself. Because we are to inspect the passengers on the train for Erebonia for being in violation of Erebonian, say, law, Erebonian customs, non declarations. What say you? It's Erebonia imposing its legal jurisdiction in Crossbell's territory. When Why not do this at the border as part of the normal border check? It's kind of a show of force. We can do this because we can. Suck it up.
Yeah, pretty much, and they have to. Right? It's not like the CGF is going to throw off the yoke of Erebonia.
And then, Colin, what was Quattro before doing this inspection? He says, I was transferred here from the Imperial Army. So that
Yeah,
is it's not even part of the civilian, border customs patrol analogy and then moving the way up the career path there. It's a military officer.
so you've written here on the notes that you liked this quest and that you wish you had more of these non-combat quests. Could you talk a bit more about that?
Yeah. So it was fairly linear, I felt. And I think that was bit of a mistake, or it would have been better for more interactive, investigatory components. You talk to everyone again, and you're supposed to recognize when the child says, "Hey, that person came in here from Quattro's car, from the other car, a single person." And that's supposed to prime you to go interact with them again to figure out why would you want a new first-time inspector and not someone experienced. This guy folds under the lightest of questioning, is a career ne'er-do-well, common thief, criminal, and not only is kicked off the train, but is placed back into custody for quite some time, actually.
Yeah. And the guy even admits that, it seems like he's trying to go legit, but he committed a minor crime here. He's been committing minor crimes. We gotta send him back.
But I would have liked more putting things together, having to maybe a checklist of what's an inconsistency, having to be more proactive and not just, I don't know if you want to say reactive, but more like, passive.
Have you ever played the game Papers, Please?
I have not. Lots of people have mentioned it in a variety of fashion, and I imagine it is exactly like.
It is exactly what you just described, in the sense of you are literally playing a customs agent, and you have to like check for inconsistencies, let people in, keep people out. I never beat it, but I did play it a lot back in the day. Either way, it sounds like you want to make this side quest into Papers, Please. And if they had the wherewithal and the engine to do something like that, I agree. That'd be really cool.
Overall, it was a fun quest. We learned a lot about the world, and it's always good to do something besides kill it.
Yeah, it's something. I've been playing Final Fantasy 16 lately, and I like the game. I'm trying to be a completionist about it, at least for the first playthrough. I'm not doing a second playthrough, but I'm doing all the side quests and I'm doing all the main quests. And something that you see in this game is that the entire game is kill people, walk through a hallway, kill more people. Whereas side quests like this, the ticket inspection that's non-combat focused, that lets you breathe, that lets you be more in the world. I wouldn't necessarily call it gameplay variation, although there is something like that coming up in our discussions with a secret quest. But at the very least, it gives the player something else to do rather than just kill shit, which we
Exactly.
need. Speaking of that, so we have to slay a monster en route to Mainz, which is... It's not the first time that we've gotten a Slay the Monster quest, but it's the only time we get it for this chapter. And you've written down why mess with proven formula.
I did. I would, but I think, Colin, it'd be a lot less intellectually dishonest if you did not omit what I wrote previously. So my concerns about your integrity and your academic code of conduct are heightened. It's a fairly standard. We saw this a lot in FC and SC, not in the third, because as we remember, there's no side quests at all in the third. That role is taken by the doors memory, not the band.
Correct.
So we go to someplace, there's a big monster, we kill it, we get either BP, we hear it's DP, detective points, it's like we've seen a lot of times. And I'm sure we will see it again in this game, in the next game, and in Cold Steel. It's a standard side quest in the Kaseki arsenal, used occasionally. I think it's good. You get to have a little boss fight, get some good XP. Too much though, and it becomes bland. It's like something that's good in small doses, but not good in big doses, to make an analogy.
Mm-hmm. I've been thinking about this in the context of playing through Final Fantasy 16, because Final Fantasy 16 has something called the Hunt Board, where certain times after you like finish a quest or as part of a quest or whatever, there are mini boss fights that you can do that you get additional money, you get additional experience, sometimes crafting stuff, but most importantly, you also get that game's equivalent to detective points. I forget precisely what they're called. And it's got me thinking about how I really like these systems that, yes, finishing the quest is good in and of itself, right? You get money, you can get certain items, sometimes the reward is a story moment, but then on top of all of that, in both of these games, Final Fantasy 16 and in the Trail series in general, you then accumulate more and more of these points that turn into more rewards. And I really like that gameplay loop because it makes you invested in doing these side quests from a multiple different angles, which is really important. And the boss ones in particular, I mean, I don't remember what this fight was, to be honest with you, so I don't remember if it was particularly involved, but when you can get these side bosses that do challenge you, that do make you, master the game a bit more, they're harder fights, then you get so much more incentive to go out and do the quest. Because the boss fight is fun, but then you also get items for doing the quest. You also get more detective points. It all just culminates into, I don't know, serotonin, whatever chemical it is that makes me happy when I play JRPGs.
So, this ladder that we've seen, it makes sense in this context. The SSS is a new, untested division in a governmental institution, the Crossbow Police, that, from what we're led to believe, is not held in the highest regard and doesn't have the most funding. So they're saying to us, prove that you are worth the expenditure of relatively limited resources, and will dole out as you prove your competence to us. So that, I think, works because a lot of times it makes you wonder, so we are all that stands between, reality or the safety of the city or the kingdom, and you're making me pay exorbitant prices for this equipment that will help us kill the demons or put the rightful king back on the or something massive. Like, you want to profit in the apocalypse? Okay. Here it's
There is something like that that's happening, though, with Tio's staff. Right, we have to buy her staff, even though it's provided by the head of the technological foundation that she's a part of, or whatever.
How can you buy the staff at the kind of sketchy looking bars on the window weapon shop near the SSS HQ? Did they get like a pipeline or whatever?
Yeah. So it's mentioned in the prologue. I don't remember if it's an optional dialogue or just when you walk up to it, but the head scientist who's working at the IBC delivers the staff to the weapon shop. And then the weapon shop sells it to us. Meanwhile, by the way, the two buildings are right next to each other, so it's not saving him any travel time or anything like that. He's just afraid of Tio.
This rent-seeking behavior to the side. I'm not sure where I was, but yes, it's a disturbing fiction. And when the People's Revolution takes power, we shall eliminate this levels and tiers of equipment. You shall be fitted out with the finest panoply and raiment from day one.
I don't know how to engage
and
with
that's
that,
a great
man. I really
way
don't.
to move on to things I don't know how to engage with because I did not know they existed. Secret side quests.
Yes. So I kind of mentioned this in the prologue episode, in which I pointed out I'm using a guide because I don't want to miss these my second time around. And in the prologue, there was one hidden quest in which Michelle gave us a quiz to prove that we knew Zemurian lore and stuff like that, and that was kind of fun. And then in this chapter, there are two hidden quests, one of which...
Misha's quiz, making us prove that we know Zemurian lore. Tell me if I am off base. But it seems analogous to, oh, you like this band? Name all their albums.
I think that's an uncharitable view of it.
Okay.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's just a fun interaction, and we get some BP for a DP for it, and DP sounds dirty. Anyway, so in this chapter, there are two side quests. One is, so you remember those two kids that we saved in the Geofront, Ryu and what's his face?
Yes, they made quite the great impression on you, I can tell.
I forget the kid's name. It's been a week. Anyway,
James?
I don't maybe. Ryu is distinctive. I don't remember the other kid's name, but either way, the other kid found a cat, and yeah. So his dad doesn't want him to keep the cat. So we are tasked
Kill the
with
dad.
finding the cat's owner.
Yeah, yes, yes.
So Lloyd hides the cat in his jacket, which my cat's right there, and there's no way in hell she would let me put her in a jacket. I don't care how young she was. That's just not going to happen. I don't think any of your cats will let you do that either. But Lloyd does it because he's a miracle worker, I guess. And we go to the upper class rich people district, and you have to talk to everybody. And so you meet characters like Sophia Hayworth, the wife of the merchant that we're going to be talking about that we see in Amorica Village. We also meet their son, named Colin, who really wants a cat, but cannot have a cat on account of he's too young, but he really likes the cat. And so then he helps direct us to go to where we can give the cat up. And long story short, there's a house that if you had been going to it and talking to everybody, over the past prologue and half a chapter, there was this ongoing story in which the head of the house is a business guy, and he had some important documents. And then at some point, he came to the conclusion that his daughter ripped all the papers up, and he didn't really know why. Well, in this side quest, it's revealed that she has actually adopted the cat secretly, and the cat destroyed the documents. And so that's why it ran away, because it felt bad or something like that. And then it's this heartwarming story of a daughter and a father and a cat coming together and there being happiness. But what I liked about this, number one, there's some world building in there. Number two, it encourages you. It rewards you for having put in the time to talk to everybody. Because there are these ongoing stories that if you're not talking to everybody, you'll completely miss. And they give Crossbell such texture that I'll talk more about this later in the episode, but I'm making sure that I talk to everybody this playthrough, and I am so happy that I am, because there's so much cool stuff there.
Leaving aside the fact that it is patently ridiculous any cat would ever feel shame for doing anything at all because they are convinced they are the apex of God's own creation. This raises a question about the concept as a whole. How discoverable should not just this, but this type of quest or component to the game be? Should someone say, for example, oh, we've heard rumors about, and then describe the situation in general terms about, say, a banker in the residential or the uptown. Maybe check it out, but nothing more. Should it be completely off the radar? What do you think?
I think this series in particular is kind of special in how it's handling it. And by that I mean, like, we're 4 games deep into the series, right? We're on the 4th game. So we know for a fact that after every major story beat, the things that NPCs say will change. And so if we are dedicated enough, we will go and we will talk to everybody as a matter of course, as this is just what you do as a Trails fan. I'm not saying that all Trails fans do that, and I certainly didn't do that my first time through. I'm trying to make the effort to do it now. And having these secret quests then are an additional reward that the exploring player gets, because they now see content that other players hadn't. And given the fact that the game is pretty complete even without them, I don't see a problem with Falcom rewarding its dedicated players
Okay.
with stuff like this.
Put it like that. I get it. And then I think I almost stumbled onto the second side quest, but I refused to be stopped on the road to Damascus and then turned around. Because I went into the casino. There was a little short scene about Randy promising not to blow all his money and put a pin, but we get a great scene towards the end of the chapter about not evil, but just kind of non-virtuous, morally neutral, non-virtuous, workers. A worker who's a drunk who spends all his money at the casino each weekend, and I kind of like that because
Mhm.
it made the world feel more real. That these people who this guy does not have control of his life. It's most likely gonna continue to spiral unless something jolts him out of it. And maybe the near wolf attack is that being stalked moment, but it was a nice little moment of the negative externalities of this great big neon casino in town.
Yeah. And what I think will be cool, now I'm guessing here, I don't know, but I'm fairly certain that we will see that guy at the casino in later story beats if you take the time to go and visit the casino. But the reason why we're talking about the casino uh, actually has nothing to do with what you're talking about, because that is a scene you would have gotten either
Ah,
way, I'm fairly
okay.
certain. But this side quest starts in I think it's the Long Lao Inn, something like that. It's the Chinese inspired in the East Quarter, where if you go into one of the hotel rooms at a certain point in the story, you'll find out that a man is visiting with his son, and he promised his son that he would get him a Mishi plushie. A Mishi is basically this universe's version of Mickey Mouse. We really start to see him being pushed forward in the Crossbell games, and then he's in all the games after that. I don't think he's in the Sky Trilogy, though. Either
Again,
way,
Liberal is a
the kid really
backward
wants this.
place full of hicks.
The kid really wants this Mishi plushie, but it's sold out. It's limited edition, and Randy seems to remember that you can get one at the casino. So you go to the casino, and much like a lot of video game casinos, you can buy tokens to then gamble, and then you can use those tokens to buy rewards. And basically, this quest kind of like nudges you into learning about that system. And you can either just buy the tokens outright if you want, or you can do what I did and gamble and get the money that way. They have blackjack, they have poker, they have slot machines, and they have roulette. So you have a lot of different options to do it. I mostly played poker. I found it was the easiest way to get the tokens, but this is the kind of gameplay variation that I was talking about. I think
Yeah,
that's really fun.
and I mean, I'm not going to do it. I've had a couple bad experience with gambling. Like just this past weekend, I lost a parlay that had the Jets beating the Browns, the NFL Hall of Game preseason with the over, combining that with the USA winning by at least one goal against Sweden in the Women's National Cup, World Cup, and I'll tell you what, Colin, did not happen.
Yeah, even I heard that the women's team lost, because apparently that's really important now. But that's neither here nor there. I think I mentioned this in a previous episode, but if I didn't, I'm just going to say it again. On the slot machine, they kind of have this fun Easter egg where it's all like Adol and Dogi themed, and as you succeed in gambling, Adol gets stronger and finds chests and stuff. And there's another Ease related Easter egg that's not in this game. I think it's in the next game in Azure. But I really kind of like this whole Falcom taking a nod to fans of its other flagship series.
And I'll give you a nod for taking that nod.